Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to SWARMathon, a series about how AI is transforming the path to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Manal Smiley, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host Anne Cantera. Together, we're excited to explore how cutting-edge technology, especially AI, is reshaping the path toward achieving the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Let's start with a quick overview of the UN 17 goals. These range from eradicating poverty, zero hunger, clean water, and clean energy to building sustainable cities. You can learn more. You can learn more by checking. Okay. I see. I thought I heard something. Okay, you can learn more by checking the link that I put in the comments and go to the UN's website and check out these 17 goals. And if you or anyone you know is working in these areas and would be interested in joining us as a speaker for future events, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Anne, and we would love to hear from you. Today, we'll mostly focus on SDG 10, reduce inequality within and among countries, and SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. The key question we'll be exploring today is how AI be a transformative force for inclusion and accessibility, advancing innovation while reducing inequality, and creating systems that serve everyone. And we're incredibly lucky to be joined by three inspiring panelists here who are leading this work on the ground and in systems across the world. So let's dive in.
Hey everyone, it's Anne. Before we dive into this amazing panel, I just want to remind everyone that next week our sister podcast, Designathon, starts. Yeah, it's going to be pretty amazing. Our first topic is pretty spicy. It's the future of user interfaces in the age of AI. Is Figma dead? ? So tune into that. Same time, same place next weekend. And now I'll have our amazing panelists introduce themselves. I guess we can get started with Megan.
Sure. Hi, I'm Megan Thomas. I am the founder of an accessibility-focused agency here in Portland, Oregon. We're not just focused on Portland, Oregon. We're happy to help anyone just about anywhere, I think. Mostly what I focus on, my little niche, is website accessibility. And that is primarily because 11,000 people a day are turning 65 here in the US, which means for the next 13 to 17 years, those people that are in the baby boomer generation, they are not getting better with their technology, but technology is advancing faster than they are able to keep up. And there's a lot of temporary and situational impairments that the rest of us experience. So I'm hoping to help business owners reach more of their target market by helping them improve the accessibility of their website.
Great.
Hand over to Noella.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. My name is Fobete Noella Lum. I am from the Northwest region of Cameroon, and Cameroon is in Africa. I am a teacher, and I'm also a sign language interpreter. I am the founder of a community-based organization called Our Voice Cameroon, and my journey in advocating for inclusion and for persons with disability started as a teacher because I had the opportunity to work in an inclusive school, and I had first-hand experience with the deaf person. I mean, before working in that school, we had the stereotype that deaf people cannot do anything. I mean, we have a phrase that we call them. I don't want to say it, it's not very respectful, but we just see them as incapable. So when I had first-hand experience with them, I see how intelligent they can be. I see how smart they can be. They can write programs. They can use the computer. And out of school, they are just mute. I just told myself that there's something that I can do. I can just volunteer to be a sign language interpreter out of school to help them to integrate in the society and in the community. I'm very happy to be here and to discuss with these amazing people how we can use AI, advanced technology, to further integrate these people in everyday activities. I'm sure they'll be very happy to talk with us if we can help them to talk with us. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Hi,
Vaidehi?
hi everyone. I'm Vaidehi. I am originally from India, but you can find me in Boston, US. I often call myself a curiosity dabbler, but mostly I'm a design researcher and a strategist. I thrive at the intersection of design, social science, and technology, and that's where kind of a lot of my work and deep focus is, primarily on building kind of equity and inclusion through the design research that I try to drive. My journey started in product design, evolved through UX, service design, and has kind of taken me working with public health workers in rural India to global innovation teams like the inclusive research team at Microsoft or today at Philips, where we're working on building AI-enabled obstetric ultrasound solutions for underserved markets like India and Kenya. And I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to some thought provoking conversations on accessibility and design today with this wonderful panel.
Hi, sir. We are happy to have you all here with us today. So let's go to our first topic. So we want to look at how accessibility and inclusive design can be a powerful tools for innovation. So we first go to Megan. Can you share how accessibility first design has helped organizations not only meet compliance but also grow, scale, and serve broader audiences?
I can. I love to break this down super simply because a lot of small business owners have a tendency to think because they haven't met a lot of people with disabilities in their life. And I hope to remind them that just because you didn't know they had a disability doesn't mean that that disability doesn't exist. So I help educate them, help them understand that 70% of disabilities are invisible. They don't actually know. And sometimes when I ask them to imagine someone with a disability, just to kind of prime them for understanding their users more, what they bring to mind is someone with like a really profound disability, someone like Stephen Hawking, and they don't realize that there's a lot of people that they're excluding with just simple design decisions that are preventing them from accessing the folks who still have money. They just happen to also have a disability as well. So I know that people can increase their target market by, I would say, probably at least 15%. Not everybody's going to be your customer, but just by being more inclusive, you can expand your market, you can scale your business, and it doesn't take that much effort.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah, go ahead,
Mhm.
Vaidehi.
and I would also love to add, Megan, you bring a great point. A lot of times there is this otherization of like people who are experiencing disability, and you almost see even in like broader discussions that, oh, we'll kind of get to this user type when we release the first draft to the market where we're looking at quote unquote normal users. But sometimes I have to say this, like exclusion is temporary, right? Like even in short-term injury, which many of us have experienced in our life, affect the way like we interact in the world around us. So, like when you're looking at a sunlight and then you kind of readjust your vision back to a regular kind of scene, your vision is impaired with like a little bit of like sun glare that you experience. And so it's important to understand that everyone will experience impairment at some point in their life. And sometimes it is situational, created by environments. Like, when you're in a loud environment and trying to navigate an audio-based user experience, it is very tricky to navigate navigate that space with you feeling overwhelmed by the sensory overload that you're experiencing. So in my work, for example, on the AI-enabled obstetric ultrasound at Philips, we designed for the frontline health workers in India and Kenya, many with limited digital literacy. Accessibility here isn't just kind of about compliance, but part of like the design principle. We co-design workflows that are intuitive, audio supported, and resilient in these low connectivity settings, because true innovation essentially meets users where they are. And you might like underscore what these kind of exclusion scenarios or environments could look like, but it could be a very day-to-day scenario of like working in a loud environment or being injured for a temporary part of time, and that impairs the way you move around the world. So
I think that's a
Yeah,
huge
great
takeaway
point.
for designers, right? Like just that simple fact that accessibility does not necessarily just equate to disabled. It's environmental or a million other possibilities that can change minute to minute. I don't think a lot of designers even are taught that or even approach that. And I'm curious, are there some simple examples besides, like as a voice designer, I'm up against the loud environment, right? Like the airport and someone being on
Mhm.
the phone and talking to a bot, and the environment is loud and the bot picks up on that and it takes them down the wrong path. And like, that's something I deal with in my job. But is there some simple examples? Megan, you probably have a laundry list of
I mean, I've got an easy
cases.
one from last year when I fell off a horse and broke my arm. I was
Oh,
temporarily disabled for a short period of time. And thankfully, it wasn't my dominant arm, but I was still unable to use the computer the same way I would have. I was still struggling to like use my phone for certain instances, for certain tasks, because I could only use one hand. And as you know, like phones are getting bigger and bigger. So of course, one hand means I drop it on my face when I'm trying to read it at night or something
yeah,
embarrassing, but it's also like that's a reality. That's human. There's lots of situations where
exactly.
this can come up.
Yeah. And you could almost enable your research process to intentionally create the situations when you're testing these products. So our team is often like planned situationally, creating these moments where we're testing a product and in a very, very loud environment, which probably doesn't represent time to time the user might experience, but in many instances it does, right? Like if you're in an open clinical setting in rural India with like kids crying in the background, but while trying to operate this device, with oftentimes like we hear crows, dogs moving around, and so like how could the user operate simple but yet like a complex ultrasound device while experiencing all these environmental conditions? What are those sensory overloads? How can we make our solution extremely intuitive? And testing in those conditions is important because you're not going to learn without actually being on the ground, spending time with the user, um, participating, and almost like leading the session with a participatory mindset, where you're like a facilitator and the user's kind of driving um, what they think of your prototype.
It's really interesting too
Exactly.
because you're in the hospital at midnight, and it's totally different than being in the hospital at say 6 a.m. or 8 p.m. And I think that speaks to how, in the age of AI, we need UX researchers as much as we ever did.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all agree that this accessibility is kind of for everyone. It's not like specifically for some groups of people that have like some disabilities or like have some permanent problems with their like everyday use of technology. It's kind of can get involved like everyone somehow in their lifetime.
Yes.
So yeah. Nola, would you like to add something?
Yes, I just want to add that I'm very happy that Megan goes the extra mile to design websites to expand the market, and she's looking out for people that, I mean, people that want to make money will not regularly look at that direction, and I think that's a very good thing. I just want to say that sometimes I'm always very positively biased because I always, having spent 7 years in the deaf community, I always see with that kind of eye, with a kind of deaf eye. So I'm always wondering, is there a way that uh, these website designs, let's say advertising companies, or can accommodate deaf persons in their ads? I mean, we have auto captions, but like what um Megan was saying, background noises can interfere with what AI is capturing. So, is there a way that we can, we deaf people, we speak with our hands. So, is there a way that we can actually accommodate them in these website designs and all?
Oh, I think this is going to probably sound kind of strange, but I think we can learn something from Apple and the way they present some of their accessibility features. I love when I use Apple TV. So we have an Apple TV, we're an Apple house. So we have an Apple Watch, the Apple TV, and my fitness classes. I'm trying desperately to be more fit and to find time in my day to work out. And I love doing the yoga classes because they use sign language while they're introducing the class. And they're like, and then close your rings or whatever. And they're sharing some stuff, and I think we could incorporate some of that into commercials. What would change for a non-deaf person to have a person who is deaf signing the language or the content of an ad as the person in the ad? Like, that doesn't exclude people who are not deaf. It might feel a little different that they're not the default user being perceived on screen, but like, I personally love to see it. I follow a lot of deaf people on Instagram, and part of it is because I love learning phrases in other language. So there's a very sarcastic one that I've recently learned. I don't know if it's terribly appropriate here, but I love learning it, and I think that also draws out curiosity in other people. So I think that there are ads and websites and companies that could just choose to use someone who is deaf or someone who uses sign language to augment the message that they're sharing. And I think it would be received really, really well. So Apple does a pretty good job of that. And no, this was Tennessee, but recently Tennessee, a state here in the US, they're partnering with singer-songwriters and to create alternative text for images on websites to encourage people to travel to Tennessee. So folks who can't hear the commercials, we can at least include really robust alt text so that they can experience what that is like. Even if they're just looking at the picture, they can still get that same experience, a more equitable experience that everyone gets to share in. So I think there are lots of ways to include that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Megan, for
Thank you,
answering
Megan.
that question. Yeah. So yeah, even like for another example that come to my mind, like it's not for deaf people, but for colorblind people, is that like so my husband playing this FIFA game on PlayStation, so he has this problem that he can't differentiate green and red. So there is something in the setting that you can there that is specifically for colorblind people, and they can go and based on their like there are different colorblind categories, so they can like choose that, and it's like change the colors based on their problem, so they can have a better experience playing the game. So yeah, that's another
It's got to
example.
be better. If you can't differentiate the grass from the jerseys, that's going to be a hard time playing the game. So that's super
Yeah,
inclusive. I love that.
yeah, exactly. It's
And like,
it wasn't there before, but they added it recently, so it's very great option.
So I want to ask the panel, what's the deal with the widget, the accessibility widget? I it does can somebody explain if it's good, if it's not good? I read different things. I
have opinions. I have opinions. My opinion is not a fact, but it's so interesting that you bring this up because I just talked to my dentist yesterday because they did their website, or they had someone rebuild their website during the pandemic. And I haven't gone to their website. I've been a patient for over 10 years, so I don't spend a lot of time on their website, but I went to look at it because of the website accessibility evaluations I do every week. And I found so many accessibility issues, but the company that has provided their website, they provided a little widget. And I was playing with the widget to see, like, does this actually truly help if someone's got a problem? No, it in fact made it a scary looking experience because like it inverted all of the colors, but the default text was just hard to read. And that doesn't require a widget to fix. It just means go into the code and choose a different color. Like it's 6 keystrokes. It's not even, it's what, like it's hard is where I want to go with the Legally Blonde thing. It's not even that hard. It doesn't require a widget. It just requires you to care enough about your users and understand that you cannot segment people with disabilities out of your target audience. You don't know who has what disability or how they're impacted by like the severity of that disability. And if like you use a widget because you think this is going to be the panacea that fixes everything, it doesn't fix code that was written improperly to start with. So there's so many things that it doesn't help with that accessibility widget. And there's a lot of things that it actually impairs. So you think you're helping someone, but you've actually made the use of people's assistive technology that is personal to them, that they have decided suits their needs. You've broken their access to that accessibility tool. And somehow you've helped them, but you've actually broken the experience for more people than you've helped.
Mm-hmm. And I often think,
exactly.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to ask our audience to feel free to share their questions in the comments, and we're gonna answer them at the end of in the last 15 minutes of the event. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Megan, if I understood properly, you're saying that most of the widgets are just like formality, just like to say we are there. I can really resonate with that. I mean, not concerning websites, but concerning our daily activities in Cameroon. As compared to other developed countries, you see that most of the inclusion in Cameroon is just by words and not by actions. And my experience in the UK, because I'm currently in the UK doing a leadership apprenticeship program, I have seen practical examples how institutions make an effort to include people. I mean, you just say it's for formality, but at least the formality is there. But in Cameroon, it's just worse. For example, you go to the hospital, and when I went to the hospital like last week, and the GP asked me if I would need anything to make my visit more comfortable, maybe a sign language interpreter or braille or anything. In Cameroon, you just go to the hospital and they're not going to ask you anything, and sometimes nobody cares. And if the person is deaf, they can just give you paracetamol for the pain, and you not actually communicate with your doctor. And we go to public exams, the limit in fact, the amount of accommodation is really, really small. Maybe if they have an interpreter, you can have one interpreter to like 50 students or more. So I don't want to compare saying that at least you have the widget. I want to just say that people in our area were going through worse things. And I just hope that they'll have the mind to actually make impact or just think about it. Maybe just have the widgets that are not working well to start with before we're going now to the other things. I just wanted to add that I'm actually experiencing that, and it's not really good.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, though. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of places where the effort's just not there. The desire might be there, but the resources might not be there. And let's be real, some of these accessibility overlays are quite expensive, despite the fact that they don't seem to they don't change over time, but they're still expensive over time. So that it's not really an investment. Whereas folks in Cameroon could maybe make an investment by printing out materials or making it available where people can like maybe write out what they're trying to say to the doctor if they're not able to communicate effectively. But resources make that incredibly hard to serve people with disabilities. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So, what are some ways? Sorry, Wei, do you wanted to add something?
yeah, I mean, I was just kind of at a philosophical level thinking about, whether or not like people with disabilities are involved in vetting these widgets. Like, many like overlays kind of create friction for screen readers, users, or like disable native browser tools. So I just wanted to add without participatory testing, widgets can
Mm,
reinforce exclusion even when they're kind of meant to
yeah,
help.
exactly. Yeah. So, what are like? Let's dive in. Let's include AI to our conversation.
Mhm.
What are some ways AI could help bridge this like language and communication gaps and make like everything accessible for everyone?
Well, it would be super
Anyone?
nice if if AI were to, and I'm not trying to complain. I love the fact that we have AI and it's helpful. It would be really nice if it was creating code by default that was accessible, that was automatically baking in some of the translations. I believe language and access to information in your own language that you can understand effectively. I think that's a default accessibility need. So language translation services, but also I'm literally thinking about Noella's in Cameroon. Like, well, language translation services, that's great. Do they have a device that can access that information? Do they have a data source that is easily accessible enough that provides that information in real time? What does that default look like for AI? I would really love to know how we can make a more accessible world. I mean, Anne, you're the one who's spending a lot of time in the AI world.
My first thought was, why can't we auto generate metadata on images? Like, why can't it? There's
Mm,
like, I mean, it can.
I mean, aren't some of these companies still paying people in Kenya to do that? Like to add metadata to images so that things can be done automatically? Like we're still doing the teaching the machines with human learning in order to get that auto
Yeah,
metadata,
but
right?
I feel like, you can upload an image to ChatGPT and say, what is this? And it can tell you. So why can't every image if we so like I feel like there's a business to be had there. Somebody's gonna run with that. You're welcome.
mm.
Okay.
Okay. Wade, would you like to add? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I think AI can be used to meet some of the needs of deaf people by actually developing AI-powered captioning and maybe sign language detection programs. Like it detects the sign language and actually caption it to enable deaf people to communicate online with other people using sign language. So like if I'm signing and you don't understand signing, AI is going to know what I'm talking about and caption it and detect what you're saying and maybe have an AI somebody that is actually signing it. And like Megan said, it needs a lot of resources. And I mean, for a country like Cameroon, I'm sure that the state has budget for that. Maybe they're not very particular about helping people with disabilities, or maybe they have it in paper, but they don't want to execute it. I don't think that is that bad. But I'm just sure that there's a negligence somewhere that we cannot just identify it and the people are suffering. But if we look at it from this perspective, I think that we can help deaf people with this AI.
I
Yeah.
would I have some thoughts on just like I think this is a great topic of conversation, and I love that I'm sharing the panel with such interesting and amazing people doing such wonderful work. I also have a little bit of like cautionary approach to like this premise that AI is here to like solve for all our problems. because there are inherent like biases even in these algorithms that are embedded by the biases that humans carry. And so too often we see that the default settings for our tools and systems encode those kind of values of the dominant groups. This is very well said by Sasha Costanza-Chock, a book that they've written, Design Justice. I highly recommend. um, Essentially they talk about kind of like the inherent biases in these technological systems and how we need to constantly keep questioning these black boxed algorithms and trying to understand what data is fed into them, right? Like so that they're generating those outputs. Is it diverse enough? Is it kind of representing the voices of different communities that it is designed to serve? For example, like in maternal health, the default has been historically, catering to a user that's kind of urban, top-down, health official that lead the service delivery of ultrasound and the context of care that I'm operating under. Um, but we are kind of designing with the midwives in low resource areas because centering those at the margins kind of like radically transforms the outcomes and ensures AI doesn't replicate those dominant defaults. And what could that look like? We're kind of gathering all the data from ground that are training these algorithms, and flagging whenever there is any kind of issue. And there is a rigorous kind of testing and regulatory framework involved. So it's highly important to like constantly even check these technologies, and have that kind of cautionary approach to like, yes, it could, while it could advocate for change at a very fast level, are we also being mindful of that change and like making sure it does not replicate those dominant systems that we have seen take shape in the past with some technologies.
Yeah. So, Vaidhi, what is like? Let's explore how we can design more inclusive, like public systems, especially in health. So you focus on designing with not just for like underserved communities. So could you share how care-centered and participatory design can help shape inclusive and tech-enabled public services?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love nerding about this topic all the time. I think it starts with the curiosity of also like understanding yourself and your own biases as researchers, and then also honing that you're not the expert whenever you're kind of entering these spaces. So how could you like work with the community, for example, in building these products and services and involving them early in the process rather than later? For example, like we're working on building AI enabled ultrasound tools. And so we start with kind of health system mappings, journey mappings, interviews with different stakeholders on ground. So like nurse midwives, county health officials, really trying to understand what are some of the problems that they are facing, and then also understanding how the system that we're developing kind of fits in as like a puzzle piece to their already complex care delivery, and not create this like ripple effect in the system where it would lead to a lot of unintended consequences, right? What does that mean? That means a lot of like field-based usability tests, participatory like failure mappings, um, co-creating mitigation strategies with the community of nurse midwives. This essentially also radically shifts how we define clinical risk and usability from like a very top-down checklist to a ground-up lived experience lens. Um, yeah, oh, I'll stop there and would love to hear from
Okay.
others as well.
I really love that you said
Yeah,
that.
thank you so much.
It comes to mind that, and I know that this is something I lean on because of who I target. A lot of small business owners in the US are part of the baby boomer generation. And I say this, and I want to be really distinct because I know people, I'm an elder millennial, so there's a lot of folks who might think I'm speaking about boomers as a sarcastic term, and that's not the case. The baby boomer generation is the generation of people born after World War II, where like just population exploded. And having such a large population of people aging at the same rate, roughly, we can actually start making assumptions, and I do put that in air quotes. We can start making assumptions when we design that we need to design for the old who, or the elderly, the folks who have vision related disabilities. So we're also including people who are blind or any variation of vision deficiency or vision disability. But the same goes for including the deaf community. The old folks are hard of hearing and they become more hard of hearing as we age. I'm becoming more hard of hearing, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that, but because I'm only 43, but like this is a fact of human life. Our physical, these amazing devices we call bodies, they do age and they start to lose fidelity on some of these things. So if we assume that people are going to be hard of hearing or deaf, then we can automatically bake that into what we design and how we include people from the beginning. This is sorry, I'm going to get on my little soapbox. Like I will kick this over, but like y'all, we are all only temporarily abled. I think Cindy Lee said that. And I'm like, yes. And as Urvashi in the comments is saying, she was a one-armed person as a mom holding my baby. Yeah, that was what I was dealing with as someone who had their left arm broken. It's the same thing. It's just a temporary situation versus a disability versus a lifelong disability of a limb difference. Like we need to include everyone, and not everyone looks like what we think they look like or has the same experience. So if we just design from the start, we can include more people. My soapbox, little pitchfork.
Great. Yeah, we're advocating for that as well. Yeah. So, what are the challenges of designing like this inclusive and accessible tools for the marginalized like communities and groups?
Um, Please, can I say something on that? I don't know. That's not my field. But before Megan answers, I want to just say something. And she's made mention of the involving the people in the design. That's what Leslie said as well, involving them in the design. But as she was saying, I was just reflecting, like how do we involve them in the design? Do we just sit? Okay, we have an idea that in order to make AI to help these people, we need to involve them in the design. So I just go to the community. Okay, deaf people, come. We want to do AI and we want to hear your opinion. Maybe they don't know what AI is. They don't even know what you're designing. Some of them never went to school. Some of them. So I was actually reflecting from my background and from the people I work with. And in our society, we see that most persons with disabilities are left out in education, in advocacy, in almost everything. And when there's an issue like this, and we are realizing that to better help them, we need their opinion. But then they don't even know how to tell us what they need or how we can better help them. So maybe for more developed countries is maybe different because persons with disabilities are more accommodated in schools and everything. But in countries like Cameroon and maybe other African countries, we have to begin by breaking the stereotypes that you can actually hear from a deaf person. They have something to say, they have feelings. They're not just any person. From there, you can start bringing them to schools and teaching them that you can say this, you have rights, and this is what you're supposed to do. And from there, you start teaching them about technology. You can actually use AI to do this, or you can actually do this. This technology is to help you. So you're going to tell me how to help you. So I just wanted to add that from my perspective and from after working in the grassroots and my advocacy program, I see that sometimes we move too fast because it's like I don't have much to contribute because from what I want to say the people are not in the society, they are not on the table. And if you bring them to the table, they will not have what to say because the basics have been left out. They have been left out for so long that to bring them now is very difficult. and we must go back to the bottom and start bringing them. But I'm very happy that I'm here. I'm actually learning how we can better integrate them. So I know that the first thing I need to teach when I go back, I need to educate my friends on AI. I'm sure they are aware of AI. Everybody's aware with technology and all that. And I need to start telling them that you can use this AI to do something better with your life. I got this from these people. I just wanted to share that aspect and say it's really helpful. I'm really glad I was here. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Your work with deaf and hard of hearing communities in Cameroon is so powerful, and this is an honor to have you here. So, like, what roles do you think like community leadership play in building trust and driving change for these communities?
I think that community leaders can first start voting for policies or programs that include people both theoretically and practically. If the school is an inclusive school, for example, you should have a sign language interpreter. If you want the school to have a sign language interpreter, you should have a sector in the university that trains people to be sign language interpreters. So the world is including people. And I mean, I don't really like to talk bad about my country, but you see that those in charge will sign a bill that this is an inclusive school, but you look at the university and the teachers training colleges, you don't see any department for training sign language interpreters. So who are those that are going to sign for the deaf people in school? And you start seeing where the clash is coming in. So for myself, I was not trained as a sign language interpreter. I had the opportunity to work in an inclusive school. The school was owned by missionaries from out of the country. So they brought in the sign language, the American sign language, and they taught us the sign language to teach the students the sign language. And there is still a banter if there is a Cameroon sign language we're not aware of. But in our community, we have over 100 plus deaf students. And according to statistics, there are about 60,000 deaf people in Cameroon. But in our community, we have just like 100 plus. I'm imagining what is happening with the other 59,000. What's the government doing? I think that they can set policies in theory and in practice. Start training teachers to teach these students. Start promoting um uh let's say cartoons, baby shows like Coco Melon. Hi, Coco Melon. It's going to help the deaf child growing up, and it's going to help the parent or the child of a deaf parent. So you're going to learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I actually saw a program like that last week on BBC, yeah. So I think that if the government puts more effort in theory and in practice, we're going to meet up with you people and I can discuss and share what you guys are sharing. And now
Yeah.
I'm just learning to document for the future so that when we are at that level, I'm like, this is what I learned from Megan, from Vinny, and from SWARMathon series. So
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
I think that's a great point on just like developing capabilities. I think especially when you're working on like a project in a multi-sector kind of partnerships, centering like care at core. Like in my career, I've worked across like nonprofits, government organizations, academia. The one thing that sustains is just like inclusive futures is a shared vocabulary. And in our kind of co-design sprints with we have like a government health official, a midwife, a data scientist, we're in the same room. It's worked because the design language helped level the power dynamic and kind of created this space where all these different people could come together and work towards a shared product solution policy initiative like and then since we have all the stakeholders in the same room, they're there to kind of look at the budget allocations, look at kind of the policy change that they could create that would enable some of these solutions to be put in place. So I think it's just a lot of like ultimately as a designer, I feel like design solution is like a bridge. Like my role is to translate across these different realities between patients, engineers, policymakers, so that equity is not an afterthought, right? But it's kind of embedded from the start. Um, and yeah, I'm always thankful to like people who are on the ground doing the work.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious what you all think is the biggest like financial misconception about, Megan, I know you're all about this one. Oh, I'm just not going to spend the money on that. It's not going to help my business, like all that. What are the misconceptions and what is the actual math?
The misconception is we don't have none of our users are disabled. That's the first misconception. And I hear that primarily when I was in working with tech companies, like software as a service companies. They didn't want to think that that was possible. And they would almost, not everybody, but a couple of people would be almost mad if you brought it up, like as if you're shaming them or tisking and saying, well, you should have thought of this from the start. So like the misconception is that we don't have anyone that we work with that is disabled. And I really try to help them understand like who their users might be. And again, it doesn't look like someone who is like profoundly disabled in a wheelchair using a stick to move their entire world, using it to move their wheelchair. That is not what we're talking about. We're talking about your mom not being able to find the schedule an appointment button on the website. And that's a simple activity that is actually like one of the most primary actions on, for instance, a healthcare website. I would like to schedule an appointment with my doctor or with my healthcare provider. If they can't perceive that button, they're never going to click it. So you can solve for all the user experiences and your user paths that you want to, but if they can't see it, they can't follow through with the rest of your, happy path that they can get through. So helping people understand that it really comes down to like a truly human level, and bringing their awareness to people that they don't realize have disabilities. In fact, let's see, 3 of us here are wearing visible accessibility devices, but they're so normalized that we are just like, oh, everyone has glasses. They're a fashion statement now. But 100 years ago, and I literally am referring to Downton Abbey, if you've ever watched that show, when the cook, who obviously is of a lower class level than the owner of the manor, she needed glasses. Like she was forgetting things or making recipes wrong. I can't remember what it was, but it was obviously impacting the lives of those around her. And one thing I really appreciate about that scene is that storyline is that it shows that people are not disposable. We don't need to just say, well, they can't perceive that information, so ignore them. Don't worry about them. Only focus on the people who we perceive as having money and us meeting their needs. So being more aware of what our users look like and that have disabilities. And I love it's a dangerously big assumption to make despite statistics on disabilities. What I'm discovering as a new business owner, I've only been building this business for a year, and essentially I'm consulting on websites, and sometimes they contract me to like make the website updates, but they don't know. They just simply don't know. We don't make it a big deal. In fact, I did a little deep dive reading the other day about kind of the correlation between people with disabilities and the ugly laws. Have you heard of these? Oh, cool. So the ugly laws are laws that were created essentially so that rich people didn't have to look at poor people. So here in the US, they exist, but they also existed in the UK. Essentially, if you were deformed or in any way not normal, you were essentially penalized for being in public. And a lot of this was kind of similar to the actions we see taken today against houseless people and people who are living on the street. But there were laws up until 1974, so well past the civil rights era here in the US. In Chicago, 1974, the ugly laws said, if you are disabled or deformed or in any way you don't look like the rest of us, they would send you to jail for being in public. Like there's an education level because we've swept it under the rug so much because it's somehow a deficiency as as to have some kind of disability, despite the fact that we are all going to have disabilities at some point. It just is a different timeline for each and every one of us. So part of it is just trying to, I'm learning that I need to educate people so that they have more awareness and therefore compassion, and therefore start thinking from the beginning. But hopefully AI can help with that. Yeah. Siobhan said, we don't have any disabled users. I know, right? Not the case.
Yeah.
Right, but you have
That's
to
like
speak the language of the person who holds the wallet.
Yes, essentially. Sorry for my long point to
No,
get
no, no.
to.
I
Yeah,
just want
you have to convince
to
them.
drive this home before it gets we get to the end of this, because I think as designers, we're the ones who have to sway the stakeholders, and we need the facts to back that up. And the facts is money, because that's what they
That's what they respond to. I'm
respond
literally
to.
working on building a
Right.
logic model for future customers to say, okay, so we've taken a look at your website, and you are operating your business in Indianapolis, Indiana, or New York, or Mumbai. And based on the population density of the area that you likely serve, there is this percentage, pretty broad guess, but still a solid guess, that there's this many people who are going to have vision related disabilities that cannot perceive the information on your site. If you're willing to write off that 8 million people and say those 8 million people don't need to come buy from me, and they go, no, well, I don't want to exclude them. Right. So let's design to make sure that they are existing, but you really do have to tie it into money. So if your website gets 1,000 visitors a month, which is fairly low, it's a reasonable small to mid-sized business. If there are 8 million people in your area that can't perceive it, that's probably an 8%. 8% of the people visiting your website will not buy your goods and services because they cannot interact with your website. That matters. That's where they go, oh, that's like $2,000 a month potential loss. Yeah. And then compound that over years. And then that's only just one disability we're talking about. So let's look at all these other features. And then suddenly my suggestion for a $5,000 website redesign seems real inexpensive compared to the potential loss of $100,000 or $200,000 over the course of a few years.
yeah, exactly.
No,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I think to build on top of that, Megan, that's such a good point. When accessibility is kind of embedded early, we unlock scale, right? Like not and not just if it shouldn't be seen as a cost, but it's essentially like a business model that they can build to include more, right? For example, I worked on like co-designing a maternal health um, tech software that was developed with a nonprofit called Cushy Baby. And our scale doubled with health workers when we embedded local language preferences, icon-based UI changes, and training models that respected these health workers' constraints. And so that already kind of shows, I mean, the business case for accessibility is huge. And sometimes we just have to speak the language of the stakeholders that we're working with. And if that means throwing in those numbers, yes, and if that kind of helps kind of create that change, then yeah, it's important to like meet where they are.
Yeah,
I'm going to borrow that.
exactly.
You
Yeah.
doubled your audience. You doubled your audience. So if they were selling, and you're working for a healthcare products company, so we're going to go with the 500,000 range to probably more like 1 million. If you want to go from 1 million to $2 million of sales, that's not insignificant. That's not like, oh, we sold an extra cup. No, we doubled our user base. That's amazing.
Yeah. And because there are like so many limited like accessible tools, so I think when there is one accessible tool, like and that communities can use that, like they will like the word of mouth would take this everywhere, and they're gonna have like even more than double like customers that they used to have.
Yeah.
And
I would
yeah, so
recommend this book to um, anyone who's interested. It's called The Prosperity Paradox, and it talks about kind of market creating innovation solutions that build access where none existed. That's exactly like what would happen, right? Essentially, a lot of times these users are seen as like non-customers, but then once you kind of unlock that market, you start seeing kind of innovation happening in spaces that weren't deemed as customers to begin with. So something to think
Yeah.
about.
Also, not thinking that you need to have like this a specific target audience as like accessible to like with this specific like this is specific product or this is specific target audience, like because we all have like some kind of accessibility needs. It's not very exclusive to like some specific target audience or a specific product design. So yeah,
There's a
great
couple
points,
really
everyone. Thank you.
Sorry, Manaz. There's a couple really
Yeah, go ahead.
great questions in the comments though. I wonder if we can
Yeah,
get to
let's
them real
answer
quick.
those.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Nihan says, I'm curious how expensive it is to make a website accessible. And the
I
next,
can share it
yeah,
here.
go ahead.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm
please read
guessing you
it,
might want me
and
to answer that. How expensive is it to make a website accessible? I don't think business owners should have to invest too much in accessibility. Well, I think my first pushback would be like, what's too much? And when it comes to ensuring that you can reach the biggest market and make the most money as a business owner. So I think that's why I'm developing the logic model so that they can understand like what impact can this possibly have on my business over the long term. And I do believe that once we educate people and once they understand that financial impact, they're going to naturally build more compassion. Even if it's a capitalized impact, it's still an impact. And hopefully they will begin to speak about it to, the people they are also in business with. Hey, I made updates to my website for accessibility, and what do you know? I made more money. And then other people go, oh, I should probably do that too. So even if it's trending, I'm fine with trending. I'm fine with that. The actual cost comes down to who's doing the work and how much effort it is. Someone I'm working with right now, it's a nonprofit. They have a grant, and it was a discounted rate. I'm not gonna lie. I really love this nonprofit. I really love supporting them. So I gave them a much lower rate than I would charge for a very like capital company, capitalism driven company. And it's $5,000. Like that is actually pretty reasonable, I would say. And excitingly, I recently found out about the IRS disabled access tax credit. And this is only available in the US. I'm only currently working with US businesses, but if they make less than $1 million in revenue a year, which includes a lot of small businesses, so it's an either or situation. Maybe they make more than that, but they have less than 30 employees. They actually can get a tax credit, reduce their tax burden at around tax time. Hopefully everyone got their taxes in. But they can actually get $5,000 of tax credit for spending $10,000 on remediating their website. So it's almost like free money to make your website more inclusive. So it's almost a no-brainer in my book. So I'm hoping to work with a new client soon who is in the healthcare space. Just talked to them yesterday, our first conversation about it, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna be excited about it. But that really kind of makes your ears perk up as a small business to know that, wait, I can get half off. Who doesn't love a discount? Like,
yeah.
But is it not cheaper just to embrace accessibility from day one?
I mean, it's absolutely cheaper. In fact, I think I cannot remember who did it, who talked about it, but a recent webinar said one hour of UX time spent making something more inclusive is worth 4 hours of developer time in the future. And then there's still that very old, I think it's Forrester or one of the other consultancies that's basically there's 100x return on making your website or your product more inclusive up front saves you 100 times that amount that you're going to spend in the future, whether that's avoiding an accessibility lawsuit or whether that's just making more money. It's worth real outcomes. It's worth real money.
Thank you, Megan. So let's go to the next question from Urvashi. I hope that I pronounced your name right. So, how might designers involve business teams who have control over the monies for projects that will actually make this value-driven decision?
Mhm.
What
Oh, that's
suggestion might you have?
That's a great question, Urushi. I think about this a lot. How could we kind of like frame inclusion, right? So that business teams are more involved from the beginning. And I'd like to think of it as kind of how can we meet businesses where they are? So framing inclusion as a risk reduction or market expansion strategy, right? So partnering with business stakeholders early on in your project to co-frame those KPIs, like and have that kind of seat at the table where it's not just about time to market, but time to also trust. Number of net new users onboarded or equity risks reduced, um, or like nothing kind of shifts priorities faster than like proximity. So even just like bringing business teams into these fields where you're seeing users struggle, or having, video clips of your like user research, where you're seeing a ample amount of screen glare, and suddenly that becomes like just like stories and videos have like are such powerful have such a powerful impact sometimes, that maybe numbers could not speak to. So it's just about like strategizing yourself and how you share those user stories and insights. Like when we took product owners and kind of like business stakeholders, through some of the insights that we received from the fields, it was very hard to kind of say no to a lot of these prioritized features. Suddenly, what seemed like a low priority feature became like a must have. So it definitely, do not discount like the power of storytelling, usability clips, and participatory walkthroughs to help businesses feel the friction of the users. And yeah, that's kind of like where I come from. I don't know what works for me.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Vaidehi, for answering that. Okay, the time is almost up. Oh, it's but we passed like the time, but if you have like we have one more question in the comments. If you don't mind to stay like a bit longer so we can answer this. Okay, so from Dr. Ronak, how to involve Gen AI and knowledge graph engine with you as a Swarm member. I kind of don't understand. Could you a little
Maybe that's a question
make
for
it
Megan
more?
about her logic model. Not sure.
Oh,
Oh, okay, great. I don't know
okay.
what a knowledge graph engine is, but I do use Gen AI. One of the things that is so helpful about this generative AI that is consuming all of the internet and all of the information we have is if you ask it to, it's not always perfect. Please, just like everybody else, caveat: don't believe everything you see. Don't believe it that it won't hallucinate. But if you tell it not to hallucinate, most of the time it does a pretty good job. And also ask it for references. Show me where you got this information so that I can validate it, back it up, and make sure that the research is valid. But I talk to ChatGPT and ask how many people live in the area around Indianapolis or around Portland. So if I'm looking up for this healthcare practice, I'm looking at how many people exist in the area. That's census data. That's information that is available online. I also look at averages of this type and size of business in this kind of area. What kind of traffic do they usually see? Not everybody publishes that kind of information, but we can make good inferences. We can make educated guesses, which is the scientific method. So I make educated guesses about the kinds of people who exist in the area, the number of people who might have disabilities, the number of people that they're trying to reach with their product or service. And then we start to kind of come up with an idea of what that impact could look like. And I tend to skew pretty low. I will undersell it because I want it to feel believable and realistic, and not like, oh, you can make an extra $1 million. There's no such thing as an extra $1 million. So I just try to help them understand logically and simply using big round numbers so that they understand, oh, if I were to do this, such as change the primary call to action buttons on my website, more people are likely to see it, and therefore a larger percentage of people are more likely to feel compelled to engage with it. And that seems very simplified. So we go through each possible type of issue, and all of those are surfaced by taking a website accessibility and usability evaluation on the website. So I use some automated tools. Some of those include AI, like I think DQ Axe Tools is starting to bring in more AI discovery, but all of these are programmatically found issues. And then I go through manually with my eyes and my experience. Is this clickable? Is this interactable? Can I perceive this? Can I operate it? If I put it in glare mode, or if I take my computer outside, can I still operate this website? And just help people understand what that looks like as a boots on the ground perspective. And then they start to think, oh, this actually makes sense. So mostly I query generative AI for helping me make a case for the small business in a way that they're going to understand.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. And thank you all thank you to our incredible panelists for sharing such rich and thoughtful perspectives, and our audience for your energy and participation today. So to recap, we've explored how AI and inclusive design can help us create accessible products and systems, empower community-driven change, rethink infrastructure with equity in mind, and build stronger collaborations for impact. And so let's go to each panelist, and if you have any closing thought that you would like to share, and we can end if you're good.
All right. I just want to share that we can reduce inequality and use AI to advance inclusion if we start educating persons with disability on technological advancement and how to use the technology. In that way, they will appreciate more what we do for them and use it for their own benefit and better their lives.
I love this. I'm going to
Thank
follow that
you.
up with, I love that we can include people by introducing them to technology and helping the folks who make products and services care and help them understand what that experience is like for folks. And I just remind folks that when it comes to AI, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you want good information, you want good data, then we need to be mindful about what we put in and what we're asking of it. But it is possible, I think, to overcome this inequality that we currently see. And hopefully we're getting closer to like the Starfleet of Star Trek, where we don't have money, but everyone has everything that they need. And I think AI can help us get there.
Love
Exactly. Thank you, Megan.
that. Yeah.
Baby?
I just love to close by like design is my method, but ultimately inclusion is the outcome. And I feel like everyone in this room is trying to do that in their practice. So in every project, I try to ask like who gets left out, and how can we design so they're not just included but centered. And that's what inclusion by design really means. Where it's not just like a checkbox. Oh yes, we've made a diverse product. We have these 5 different kinds of users. So how could we just constantly have that check in the process when we're designing for?
Awesome. Thank you all. It was an amazing conversation. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next SWARMathon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
You.
Bye.